the anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim or Islamophobia has reached its new heights. The escalation has been unprecedented. It has heightened to new levels. And it seems like that the university campuses are a hotbed. They have become an area where students and faculties are being persecuted and penalized.
Professor Rabab Abdul Hadi, she teaches at San Francisco State University. She is a world-renowned scholar. She has written many books. Her books have been published in English and French, German. She was invited to found a course, a new program at San Francisco State University, and it is known as AMED. It has to do with the American Muslims and Palestinian diasporas and ethnicities. However, there was some controversy on that campus about the murals to do with Edward Said on the campus. And her statements were not welcomed and misconstrued by certain lobbies, very active lobbies here. One of them is AMCHA, that is an Israeli group. It's called Initiative and Holocaust. They have been after her ever since she came. So unfortunately, even today, after many, many years, probably at least 7-8 years, she still is the only professor in the department. She has not been given funding.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Amina. I'm back with another episode of New Wave Global. As the conflict between Israel and Palestine rages on, it's almost 2 months that it's been going on. And the reverberations of this conflict have been felt worldwide, especially in US. The anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim or Islamophobia has reached its new heights. The escalation has been unprecedented. And the guest that I have here with me today is no foreigner to this concept. He's been involved, he's been in the thick of things for decades, not just for the last 2 months since the recent escalation. I have with me today Professor Abdul Jabbar, who has taught English and interdisciplinary studies for 36 years on a full-time basis at a city college of San Francisco. He's also a former visiting professor of English at University of California, Berkeley. He's also taught politics of Middle East and a course on Islamic civilization. So he's well-versed with the current situation and also the pretext of this situation. He came to US on a Fulbright scholarship and has received 2 national endowments for the Humanities Award. He received his PhD in English from Case Western, Ohio, Cleveland, and he's the author of 3 books: Reading and Writing with Multicultural Literature. His 2 other books are Not of an Age, but for All Time, and The Promise, Reality, and Potential of America's Cultural Diversity. So this just shows the depth of his experience in the current topic. Assalamu alaikum, Professor. Welcome, and thanks for taking time out to talk to me.
Yeah, wa alaikum salam, Amina. Thank you for having me on your educational show. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have about this topic, the ongoing, very, very hotly debated topic about what professors and others can say or cannot say.
Exactly. So like I said, that anti-Semitism and Islamophobia has kind of reached some unprecedented levels since this conflict. It's always been in the background, sometimes coming to the forefront, but it seems like today it has heightened to new levels. And it seems like that the university campuses are a hotbed. They have become an area where students and faculties are being persecuted and penalized. In fact, it's kind of disheartening given the fact that these are the places where the advocacy of free speech is the most. Have you seen something similar in your campus and campuses across the country?
Certainly, I think I should start with Professor Rabab Abdul Hadi. She is, she teaches at San Francisco State University, and lives in the same city where I do, San Francisco. And she's a world-renowned scholar, and she does race and resistance studies. She has written many books. Her books have been published in English and French, German. She was invited to found a course, a new program at San Francisco State University, and it is known as AMED. It has to do with the American Muslims and Palestinian diasporas and ethnicities. So it was a new program that she was very warmly invited to, found, and then she was promised a lot of funding by State University. She was at University of Michigan before she came. However, there was some controversy on that campus about the murals to do with Edward Said on the campus. And her statements were not welcomed and misconstrued by certain lobbies, very active lobbies here. One of them is AMCHA, that is an Israeli, actually, group. It's called an Initiative and Holocaust, and primarily its job is to target any professors who criticize Israel. And it's not an American organization, actually it's an Israeli. So they have been after her ever since she came. So unfortunately, even today, after many, many years, probably at least 7-8 years, she still is the only professor in the department. She has not been given funding to expand the course. And just a couple of years ago, she had a guest. During COVID, we were offering classes online. So she had a guest speaker, and Zoom refused to carry it. After agreeing to it, the students are waiting for the class. It's a guest lecturer who is going. And then her page on Facebook about this program that she is heading about American, the Islamic and Muslim Palestinian diasporas, it was removed from Facebook. So just imagine Zoom, Facebook, these mighty media, they just left her in a very difficult situation. Very lately, I'm just fast forwarding to 2014. Now, that is when the previous invasion of Gaza occurred. She went to Palestine and Jordan. She went to attend a conference, and her purpose was to establish some kind of collaborative educational programs. When she came back, this organization, AMCHA, they went after her, and they said that her interest was something very, very different from what she said she was going for. So anyway, luckily, the president of the university, Leslie Wong, she defended her. She said, we investigated her trip, and it matched 100% what she had planned and what she did. So which is really good to know. However, funding is a very tricky area. A lot of funding comes from outside sources than the state sources. So she has been held back, and she's still there, but she has not been able to do her job. The second person I want to mention is Stephen Silaita. That is also a big casualty right after the last invasion of Gaza by Israelis. He had a good job, permanent job at Virginia Tech. He was offered, he is also quite well known as a scholar. He was offered a position at University of Illinois. During that time, during Israel's very, very aggressive bombing of Gaza at that time was nothing like what's happening today. He tweeted, because his family and friends live in Gaza, he tweeted that Israel is using brutal force to quell something which could have been done with much less force. And he was very critical of Israel's barbaric treatment of the Palestinians in Gaza. It was a tweet. On the basis of that tweet, the university withdrew the offer just 2 weeks before the classes began. Now, this is somebody who resigned his job at Virginia Tech. His wife had a full-time job. She resigned her job to move to this new position. And I think they had a child also. He was also taken from school to put in the new school. So now just imagine that 2 weeks before that, he's told, don't bother to come to campus. You don't have a position.
Wow. And
go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say that I'm sure that these are not incidents that are happening in isolation. I'm sure there's similar stories across every campus in the country.
Oh, yes.
So this targeting is also not new. It's only has escalated since the new conflict, or it has kind of multiplied logarithmically in this new conflict, but it goes on way back.
I'm sure as this very ugly situation in Gaza, the genocide continues, things will get worse. It's just the beginning. I'm very concerned about younger professors who are not tenured, who cannot speak up because their jobs are on the line. They have families to support. So they end up not saying anything.
You're right. Actually, this is a great, like you said, it's becoming more and more polarized as the days go by. And in fact, I was looking at a recent poll that was conducted by University of Maryland and George Washington University, which was called Middle Eastern Scholar Barometer. And it asked professors and students about self-censoring since the beginning of this conflict. And it seemed like when they questioned the people, there was about 81% of the population from that poll which said that they were self-censoring when commenting about the Israel-Palestine conflict. But the most interesting part out of that was that when they were asked, when did they censor themselves most? And they said that it was 81% of that population said that they censored themselves when they were criticizing Israel, while they only censored themselves 11% of the times when they were criticizing Palestine. So that's like such a stark contrast, telling you that they are very scared of consequences. And the other thing was that when they asked these participants, what was the motivation behind this self-censorism? And they said it was fear and not sensitivity to the issue. So that just kind of goes along with what you were just describing, that people are just scared. They're afraid of what would happen if they were open enough, or if they were criticizing anything that Israel's doing, while they don't feel the same way when they go on and say anything about Palestine.
That's really a very important statistics that you have brought up, Amina, because this is a recent poll you're saying.
Yes.
And 81% versus 11%, that's huge disparity. And again, as you mentioned, it is not sensitivity, it is fear. Now that is amazing, yes, mind-boggling, unfortunate. Even the presidents of these universities who are being hounded, they were fearful when they were questioned recently. We can talk about that event also. And before I go into that, I want to mention what is very much in the news these days. A few students, 3 of them in Georgia, were threatened that this teacher, I guess his name is Reese, he said that he would like to cut off the head of one of them. If you're familiar with that, just one of the many things that are happening. This is very glaring and very, very unfortunate. It is eighth grade students, 13-year-old. They are passing in a hallway and they see the Israeli flag, and they're not the students in their class. One of them walks in and tells the teacher, "Why do you have this flag here?" Is and he said, "Because I'm Jew, I have family there." So far that was okay, but he said, but the student said, "Well, it offends me because what's happening, what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, genocide, and it flag offends me." Then he got carried away and he called names. He was suspended. I think he is out on bail of $10,000. Nothing much is going to happen. At least I don't think. But just imagine saying that to student, that calling her names, very foul language, and saying that he would like to cut off her head. So this is just an example of the extent. Who should be protected at this time?
Yeah.
I think Muslim Palestinian students need to be protected more than any other group at this time. I understand anti-Semitism is on the rise all around in Europe. It always goes up. Whenever Netanyahu invades Gaza and kills innocent civilians, there is a rise in anti-Semitism all over the world, including Europe. And so it is happening, but it should be prevented. Obviously, we don't want any kind of anti-Semitism, whatever the background. People who live in the US, many of them are Jews, of course, and most of the work is being done by Jewish people here to stand up for Palestinian rights. So anti-Semitism should definitely be controlled. But at this time, the more urgent need is for students to be protected who are being threatened by being beheaded. And three students in Vermont who were shot.
Yes.
Who needs to be defended? Now, this woman who was interviewing these three presidents, by the way, I just want to say that after I heard that very bizarre, I would say, a charade, when real genocide is happening, you are not talking about it. You're talking about a hypothetical genocide. What if that happened? Non-existent genocide. Never has been any threat like that on any group, except maybe Native Americans and African Americans. So I really want to just say very briefly, because there is a lot we can talk about. We need hours and hours, but very briefly, I would say those three presidents were giving answers. In my view, they should have dumbed down the answers for the Congresswoman, because I'm using that language on purpose, because she was totally ignorant about the language. She was equating intifada with genocide.
With genocide, exactly.
And then also the slogan "from the river to the sea," also equating that with genocide. Now, that slogan has many meanings. Maybe most people don't
even
know.
Used by Israelis too. It's not only a slogan that's just used by Palestinians. Israelis use it as commonly as Palestinians do.
Exactly. And actually, in the Likud charter, these words are there, from the river to the sea. Exactly. So Netanyahu's own party, the ultra right-wing party Likud, has that also. So it means different things to different people, but it surely doesn't mean Palestinians use it for freedom. And uprising is just, an uprising against oppression. Intifada is that. So
Yeah. I
when
was,
they talked,
I'm
yeah,
sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt just for a quick second. I was just going to say, because I think it's an important point that you just made, how from the river to the sea means different things when said in different ways by different people. And that's what Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, had said in her answer. She said, depends on the context. And that has been just blown out of proportion. And she's
Oh
been,
my,
yes.
yeah, because that was really the worst part of that interrogation, the charade, I would call it. This such a circus, amazing. I
Yeah.
can't believe it. The level, the stupidity that the congresswoman displayed, I cannot believe it. It's just she should learn the word intifada, what it means before talking about it. So then after I heard this, I wanted to understand more about the law, about protected speech, what it is, what the
Right.
Supreme Court says. So I did some research. I read an article by Mustafa Bayoumi for The Guardian. And in that article, he explains the word context is very important. As you're saying, and Claudine Gay mentioned, it would depend on the context. All of them said that. And this is exactly what the American Bar Association also says, so that it will depend on the context. And I don't think how that becomes a source of criminalizing these all three presidents. Let me read to you, just for your viewers also. And this is what Mustafa Bayoumi, how he explains that context. He says, to rise to harassment, such conduct must be targeted at an individual, not the whole race, okay, not at an individual. And as a 2019 Supreme Court case decided, it should be, quote, severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive, that it effectively bars the victim's access to an educational opportunity or benefit. These are the words of the Supreme Court ruling, stand on harassment. So this is what the presidents were saying. They were saying exactly the context. And then goes on, context makes the difference. This is Mustafa Bayoumi saying now. According to American Bar Association, it is the context that matters, and the context helps to make the determination about whether conduct is actionable under school policy or protected by the First Amendment. So, this is pretty clear. I think if this woman, Alice Stefanik, was going to question these educated people, she should have done some homework before she did that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I just want to mention that very briefly.
No, you're absolutely right, because that's the two things that these presidents, President McGill and President Claudine Gay, said were absolutely legally correct. She said it should be based on context, and she said that it's only harassment if it turns into conduct, which you just explained wasn't that. So and there was and it's lack of education on part of the world, the media, the masses in general, and then obviously the representative member who was questioning them, Stefanik, that they created such a rhetoric, such an uproar around it, that it just kind of turned into something that it was never meant to be. And since then, President McGill of Penn has resigned from her position. And fortunately, Claudine Gay received a lot of support from her own board of governors, and they stood by her, and she has still been able to maintain her position as president. But people are making it increasingly more difficult for her. I was just reading that the law firm that offers jobs to Harvard Law School students has refused to come to the campus this year to offer contracts to the students like they did before, just because they're not in agreement with President Claudine's stance.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. So that's really is going to go in that direction. One thing which we should really focus on when we talk about the three presidents is McGill resigned because she was actually being hounded even before this hearing for holding this, allowing this conference to take place on her campus. That the conference was about the Palestine writers, right? In that conference, many luminaries were attending. Among them was one a rock star at one time and now an educator also, Roger Water. He is the one who co-produced a documentary which is the definitive look at how US media distorts things against Palestinians and in favor of Israel. And that is called The Occupation of the American Mind. And that is, so he was there and he spoke. And then some donor said such speakers should not have been allowed to be there on the campus. And somebody, I think, threatened to withdraw $1 million donation. And then actually the government funding of 33 million for a veterinary program has been already rescinded. That is a lot of money for a school, 33 million.
Yeah.
And for what? For nothing was really given as proof of anything that is anti-Semitic. Now, latest thing which worries me is the House endorsement equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. This is just a few days ago, the House endorsed this. Now, I hope it doesn't become law, but if it does, it will be challenged by scholars, and it will be thrown out very quickly because it is really against the Constitution. And luckily, we have the Center for Constitutional Rights here. We have American Civil Liberty Unions and other organizations that are going to step in. But it's a long process. Right now, when you hear that, just imagine the effect of that on professors, applicants, who also public speakers who want to. The problem is, you can be raising all kinds of slogans. Until you come to a table and present your points of view in a civilized manner, we cannot make any progress. That's the hallmark of any university, any college campus, to allow free speech so that you can express your views in a civil way and continue to, for every thesis, there is an antithesis.
Right.
In order to get to the synthesis, you have to come together and have a conversation, whatever your points of view are, and be ready to listen to the other person's point of view, the opposing point of view. Otherwise, no progress can be made. But right now, if you speak on a public forum, in a classroom, I don't think you are really protected according to what is happening. In theory, you are protected. You have academic freedom. You have the First Amendment. Technically, we are. But in reality, you are not. So that is the sad part. That is my worst fear at this time. If these things become law, and our government, what is our government doing? We can't expect anything from this Congress. Handful of congressional leaders are really conscientious about it. They're not thinking. They're thinking about election and winning, and the APAC declaring they're throwing in so many millions to de-seat so and so. All this fear is there. And so we cannot expect any protection from this government. Sorry to say that. I think Biden is very hopeless as president. I don't remember any president who was so spineless in front of Israel. Whatever Israel is doing, Biden is going along with that. For me, our sending the money so much money, and he bypassed the congressional scrutiny in sending munition worth millions of dollars to Israel. To me, to my mind, it brings the horrible images of the Holocaust taking place in Germany, and looks like Hitler is running out of fuel for gas to feed the gas chamber so that the Jews continue be innocent Jews can be incinerated. So he's being sent unlimited supply of gas. So keep doing your job. This is what our government is doing to Netanyahu. And as I said, as I also have written about it, and I have been questioned by many people, including some of my friends. I have compared Netanyahu with Hitler. They're both evil, one worse than the other, but they're both in the same category. You go ahead. You can ask me the next question.
I was just going to say, I was just going to basically have your concluding remarks on, how we're treading very, very difficult waters at this point in the world in general and the academic world, which is supposed to be a place where you're given the right of free speech, which has just actually become a myth at this point. There's no free speech, as we've seen multiple examples of that. Even the presidents of schools, which are not even Muslims, which all three of them unequivocally supported Israel in their testimony, but were still very, very, but still were penalized for saying nothing that was legally incorrect. So, but also we're looking at how there's an imbalance in the censorship between the anti-Semitism versus Islamophobia versus anything that's pro-Palestinian. Just your comments on the imbalance of the criticism and the censorship that these two different aspects are facing.
Anti-Semitism has been documented by many organizations who have a lot of power, a lot of funds. Compared with that, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian groups, they are there, but they don't have as much money, and they don't have as many resources. They don't have as much access to the powerful circles. So the imbalance will continue as long as the media is in the hands of people who are funded by pro-Israel, pro-Zionist lobbies. I don't think we can make a change by just willing it. We have to redouble our efforts. So I think things are changing slowly. They are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a very interesting point, Amina, that all three women, also it bothers me that there were three women. So it is kind of almost, and the woman was questioning them too. Right. So it is almost like being anti-feminist in one perspective. But none of them is a Muslim. And still, just imagine if a Muslim were to say anything, what they were saying, what would happen to that person? My own experience I can share very briefly because it will take a very long time to cover it. The latest, after 2014 attack, San Francisco State University invited me to teach a class on politics of the Middle East. They knew I had been teaching it for 15 years at City College, so they invited me to teach a class there. And they have a practice that whenever a professor is offering a class, they invite the prospective students and they give professors 5 minutes each to present what the course will be like. Mm-hmm. So many professors came and spoke and everything went well. When my turn came, I stood up to speak and present my course content. Two women in the audience stood up with these posters, copies of the poster. And the poster was the same which I was holding up in a rally in front of the Israeli consulate, protesting against the aggression of the and the barbaric treatment of Palestinians. And this is a public forum. It's not a classroom. So I'm holding that up. And how did these two women get a copy of that? And then they said, Professor Jabbar is not fit to teach the class because he's too biased. And the poster said, the language was like, Hitler returns as Netanyahu. It probably offends many Jews, but I am not saying that I'm not saying Hitler is a good guy. I'm saying they're both evil. So anyway, and those were older women. I later found out they were funders for the university, and the administration stepped in, the one who were conducting the whole thing. They said, well, if you have any questions, you can have an appointment with Professor Jabbar and talk about it. Then I said, okay, I'll be happy to speak with them. Now that led to a delay by 1 week in offering the class, and it was offered only after I was interviewed very politely by the administration, and they met with me. Now, this is the most shocking thing, and I will end my conversation with you on that note. For me, it was most shocking, and I didn't know that. The two deans who were meeting with me, they said, do I know about the existence of this on my website? Now, everybody has a website, and mine is academic website. And I said, what's the video? And they both said, it is about denying Holocaust. The video says there was no such thing as Holocaust. And I was flabbergasted. I said, I really don't have the knowledge. I haven't visited my website lately. And they said, well, it is there. And they concluded that somebody had hacked into my website. And then I realized that, yes, it was there. I deleted